Welcome to a new season of the College Admission TV podcast. In Season 3, we explore the intersection of AI, education, and the future of the workforce. This fast-changing space calls for strong leadership and bold ideas. In this episode, we're joined by President William Rusty Kennedy of Andrew College.
Hello, everyone. My name is JP Novin. I'm the CEO of Plexus Education Network, and I'm joined today with President William Kennedy of Andrew College. How are you, President Kennedy?
I'm well, Zippy. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You would be our second guest for our third season of presidential podcast focused on AI education and the future of workforce. Before we jump into all the AI stuff, could you tell our audience a little bit about your background and some unique, you have a unique background, and so does Andrew College. I think our audience would love to hear about that.
Sure. Well, I guess first, Andrew College. Andrew College is the ninth oldest school in the state of Georgia, which Georgia has a lot of historic institutions. We were founded in 1854, 171 years old, founded for the education of women. And for most of that time, we were a two-year institution, even though we were founded as a four-year institution. And then we went to two-year, and we added men in 1956. We integrated in 1966, and then we added four-year degrees back in 2017, along with some workforce type courses, specifically nursing, respiratory therapy, cancer registry management. And I have been here 2 years, and in my time, we have added 9 more baccalaureate degrees. We now have 12 baccalaureate degrees. We have grown the institution significantly. We have our all-time high in enrollment. This past fall, we were at 496 students, which was a 68% increase from the fall before. Still small, but not as small as we were, and we're continuing to grow. We are a United Methodist affiliated institution in rural Southwest Georgia. We're in the poorest county in the state, about 6,000 people, about 3,000 in the town of Cuthbert. So very unique. Most of our students are residential. We have about 415 beds available on campus, but we do have a few online students as well as commuters in respiratory therapy and nursing as well. So a little bit about, that's kind of an overview about Andrew College. Myself, I am a first generation college student originally from rural Western Arkansas. I've been working in higher education over 25 years. I came up, like you said, a bit non-traditional. I was a basketball coach for many of those years. And then I, like you do at a lot of small colleges, I was a faculty member. I was administrator. I worked in student affairs. I did a little bit of everything. And then I got out of, coaching and moved into full-time administration, eventually moving into overseeing enrollment, along with athletics and a little bit of student affairs, and then at Midway University in Kentucky, and then that led me to Andrew. And during my time at Midway, we were fortunate enough to, in the 7.5 years I was there, to grow the institution from under 1,000 to just about 2,000 students in 7.5 years. Wow. So that phenomenal growth and the things we did there as a part of a great team is the reason I'm sitting here as the president of Andrew College. So that's kind of a nutshell, a little bit of everything. And I guess the other unique thing would be, besides not really coming from the academy, would be I hold a DBA, not a PhD. So I tend to think of things a lot more business minded and more. I'm much more of a numbers guy and focus on how higher ed can be presented in business terms. And obviously we're here for the students and here to do everything every other institution is, but especially in private ed, Dave Armstrong, the president of St. Thomas in Miami, he's got a great phrase, and I'm giving him credit. He always says, no margin, no mission. So you can have the best mission you want as an institution, but if you have no profit margin and you're not a solvent institution, it doesn't really matter what your mission is. So no margin, no mission, and that's something we try to practice at Andrew College.
And wasn't he a football coach at one time too?
He was, and I guess he's got a JD, and he's a dynamic guy, unique individual. He's done a heck of a job. I first got to watch him work when he was at Thomas More in Kentucky, and the great job he did there when I was at Midway in Kentucky. So he's done a fantastic job.
Well, it's interesting because I know President Hughes at Doane University. He was a coach for many years, and it's probably a sign of the times as well, because higher education has become a full contact sport in so many ways. Now, I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Andrew College was the second institution in America that conferred graduate degrees upon women.
I think we were the second. We were the second school in the U.S. to have to confer bachelor's degrees and have a track for physical education.
Well, I mean, you've been around since around the Civil War, so that's really.
We predate the Civil War, and actually during the Civil War, we actually were taken over by the Confederacy, and the building that doesn't exist on campus anymore was turned into a hospital for wounded soldiers, and was Hood Hospital for wounded soldiers. And then that building, which was the original building, burned to the ground in 1892, and the city of Cuthbert raised $25,000 the very next day, and 4 months later built the building I'm sitting in now, which is 133 years old, and it's a 5-story monstrosity, which we call Old Main. And so it's a beautiful building, but it's just a large building, and just historic, unbelievable. Like a lot of old institutions that have a lot of history. But yeah, during the Civil War, we were actually a hospital, and they displaced the women that were going to Andrew, and some of the women came over and actually waited on the wounded soldiers.
Well, I want to ask any more questions because I'm fixated on the furniture in the background. I could go on forever, and its history. So let's jump into this.
Sure.
So the goal here is to really understand how current higher education presidents are looking at. It could be a tailwind or a headwind as it comes to AI, what strategies they're thinking about. And I'll start with this question. How do you perceive the impact of artificial intelligence on the future workforce?
Well, that is a super question. And I wish I had all the answers. Obviously, no one does. But we are in an unbelievable time of change. I don't think that's news to anybody. I expect that our workforce is going to go through quite a bit of rapid change. But like so many things, I expect it not to be as dramatic in some ways as people are predicting. If you think about all the predictions about technology in the past, we're going to have flying cars by 2010. We're going to have, you think about all these predictions people had about technology. we're going to, whatever the crazy thing that computers were going to do this and replace everybody, or this was going to happen. While I think AI is going to displace workers and is going to change the workforce, I don't know if it is going to be as dramatic as everyone is predicting, because nothing is ever as dramatic as everybody predicts it to be. Now, that's not me making light of the change, because I do believe the change is going to be dramatic. But I think in you and I's lifetime, we can think of a lot of things that was never quite as radical as everyone predicted it would be. But I think we're going to be dealing with these fallouts, and how are we going to produce workers for the next generation that can meet this change? And I think the job market now is seeing the effects of some of this AI. They're talking about people. People are now going into this job market not being able to find work, and that's only going to get more difficult. So how are we as higher education institutions going to equip our graduates for the new work world? I wish I had the total answer for that. We'd be ahead of everybody on it.
Well, ADP came out of their unemployment numbers today, and I think what they're seeing is that no one is really laying off, but also no one is really hiring either. Now, this could be many reasons, but I think, what industries do you anticipate being most impacted realistically, right? Not science fiction, but realistically in the coming 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think, I think that, at least in my dealings with AI so far, I think you're going to see a lot of the intelligence areas, the research areas. You don't need as much research staff as you probably used to have. And I think you're going to see a less of a need in some of the workforce in legal services and different services where there was a lot of manpower used in document preparation and document screening. And we're seeing that already with AI resume screening and the things they're doing. So I think you're going to see clerical work, a lot of clerical work being taken offline. I think you're going to see sales dramatically changed, and we are seeing that now in the sales area. Those are a few just off the top of my head. I think that's pretty low hanging fruit. I probably gave you. I wish I could have gave you something more in depth, but that's the ones that jump out at me.
Well, obviously, when we go back 10 years ago, when we had the self-checkout versus a cashier, this has started even before ChatGPT, because I remember when I first saw self-checkout, I'm like, it took me a while to go to, now I always go to self-checkout. So it's taken about a decade to really adapt to it. And my daughter, who lived in San Francisco, she actually 90% of the time she'll take a Waymo over an Uber or any other transportation, which is a driverless car. You actually will see more of those. And as you mentioned, customer service, if you recall, we were exporting a lot of our customer service abroad, but now you could have chat agents that could start dealing with that. So a lot of service-oriented business seem to be, might get enhanced or displaced, right? So we have to see that. And as you think about these industries and the types of students that you serve, how do you feel about equipping or educating students for careers that may not even fully exist today?
That is a real concern. That is a real concern, and I think I worry that that you're talking about is a fundamental worry.
Mm-hmm.
But overlaying that, and how do I get to that, is an even deeper concern for me of how do I get faculty, and especially you got to think I represent a rural institution that is not going to draw faculty that an institution in Atlanta draws, or Macon, or a larger city. So you're going to have faculty who may be less inclined to be technology savvy, who may be at a different point in their career. And so AI is probably not something that they're well versed in, that probably not something that they are going to be integrating in the classroom as well as they could. And I'm not talking about Andrew as much as I'm talking about a lot of rural colleges.
Yeah.
That just it's not a quality of faculty thing. I think it's a comfort level of using technology and different modalities of the faculty. And so I think that worries me more, of how do we get to what you're talking about, of training these students for the jobs that don't exist yet, and for the world they're going to enter, with faculty who we're talking about things that they can't quite comprehend. They don't, and they probably, some of them don't use on a daily basis.
That's right.
And so we're saying, okay, you've got to accept AI in the classroom. You got to figure out a way, as administrators, we're saying, hey, I'm not saying how you should integrate AI. I'm not saying what the policies should be. I'm simply saying you cannot ignore it, and that you have to understand that this is here to stay, that new students that are coming in are AI natives, unlike past students.
That's
and
right.
So you need to be able to communicate, understand, and deal with these students who are coming in with this mindset of they expect you to be able to communicate and deal with them on that level. And you're going to have faculty at a lot of institutions who simply don't understand because they don't use it. They're not well versed in it. How do we get them there? And if you've got 2 years before you retire, what is your motivation to get there?
But maybe they have a different role. And maybe the cutting edge AI professor sits in Atlanta, and then the practical professor who's been in the rural area that is training for people, taking care of natural resources, national parks, and rural areas, sits in the rural area, and maybe it ends up being a collaboration. Do you see a world like that as well, where it's just going to take outside expertise for some of these?
I appreciate what you're saying, and I think to some degree you hit on something that's very intriguing. But at the same time, most, and at least in my opinion, most classroom settings, they're going to have to integrate and deal with AI, because the students are going to use it in preparation, in research, and at least me, as someone who's not a student anymore, I use AI significantly on a daily basis. I mean, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, whether it's Grok. I mean, I use several versions of AI to do all sorts of things on a daily basis. And so I'm sure the students are using it as much or more than I am, in different ways.
It's crazy. Because at some point you don't even know you're using AI. It just becomes an extension of your daily habits.
Yes.
AI native, I think that's a great phrase. It just is. So how are you planning when you think about strategies? It's not going to happen overnight. How do we get career readiness around all of it?
That is what we're trying to do at Andrew College. Is we're trying to get everybody on board with we need to meet the challenge. We need to all be on the same page that AI is here. It's not going away. We can't ignore it. How are we going to adapt to it? We want to be. We probably can't be a first mover, but we want to be in an early tranche of adapters and people who understand the usages of it in the classroom. And so that's the mindset we're trying to take. Are we successful? Not yet. But that's the mindset we're trying to get to and move towards across the academic side, using it in student services, career services, trying to integrate it into operations as best we can. Of course, when you're limited in resources as a small institution, that is more difficult. But yeah, we're trying to take advantage of it where we can, and it's both scary and exciting, and there's just a lot of emotions as an administrator as I look at what AI is bringing to the table and what the future holds.
Now, you started out with something very profound, which is there is a latent adoption from aspiration to implementation. It doesn't always get fully realized, right? I mean, we could go back to the Twilight Zone and watch those black and white movies and how they were predicting it. I guess it's Black Mirror now. But the point here is that there's certainly certain industries that are different. Like if you deal with healthcare, you got HIPAA. If you're a psychologist, you have patient privacy information. If you're finance, you're dealing with Sarbanes-Oxley, SEC regulations. So do you see barriers? I mean, the regulatory barriers that could be impacting AI-related workforce changes as well?
Yeah, I think there are, no doubt about it, and I think that will vary. Obviously, as you cited, the number of those cases that will vary industry to industry, and it will obviously also vary culture by culture within the industries.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of higher education, I think higher education has a tendency to, if I had to compare us to a boat, sometimes we're like a battleship. We don't move fast. Sometimes we make, and we kind of, as a sector, we kind of turn slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're not a speedboat.
No, and the sector is slow to adopt sometimes. Now there are a lot of institutions that are very nimble and very good at being first movers, but the sector is not. The sector is very much a lot of concepts that have been ingrained for decades are still ingrained. Otherwise we would be doing some of the things we do to this day that are a little bit head scratching. And so I wonder sometimes what resistance you're going to see with AI. The one that comes to mind for me is and I don't have an answer for this. This is purely me thinking out loud. How does the humanities deal with AI? Because you're talking about, it's one thing if you're running papers through Grammarly, which when you're talking about AI writing papers and creating content, now that's a whole nother thing with the humanities.
That's true.
I mean, so I don't have the answers. I don't claim to be an expert. But I do see that poses an issue, and people much smarter than me will come up with we'll probably come up with interim solutions, better solutions. I hope we come up with some solutions that are very good on our campus for our people.
Well, as a undergraduate philosophy student, I could tell you that the amount of time we spent reading content, Hume, and trying to figure out and parse every single word. I think I would have liked to have AI and say, what does this even mean? I mean, what are the different content maxims here, and how many variations are there? So, because you're not going to have access to read all of that, but maybe by asking ChatGPT, it says, oh, here's 15 other things that, the Kant maxim evolved into good for the sake of good. And to me, that would have opened the ability to spend more time on thinking rather than trying to search. It probably evolves that discussion. How do you find jobs for them? That's completely a different issue.
Well, but my question for you is would that have made you smarter and freed up more time for thinking, or would that have created a dependency on AI and not allowed you to flesh out your own solutions? Whereas maybe that maxim is in there and AI tells you this is what it probably meant. This is probably the best solution. These are the 2 or 3 things. When if you thought on it, maybe you would have come up with a 4th way that was totally different. That now the student doesn't come up with because AI didn't give them that.
Well, I think this is an opportunity for forward-looking professors, okay, which is the types of curriculum and questions you want to have is not around information, but it's about extraction and creative thinking, which kind of forces you to come up with a completely different curriculum. I think the disruption in curriculum and how we challenge the students could be very interesting. It could be an opportunity to force them to think that like ChatGPT will tell you certain things, but it's not, the human side of it is what we got to figure out. Now, I'm curious, when you talk to your board, how are they thinking? What are they saying around all this stuff?
In fairness, we've had limited open discussion about AI. I mean, we've I have briefed them a little, very little on it, and we've talked.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a lot of other things we've talked about, and so maybe I've talked in strategic terms, but we haven't had a free-flowing open discussion about AI. So I would be speaking on behalf of them and not probably having all of their thoughts on it. I know my board chair and I have had a lot more discussions on it, and he's an English major from his undergraduate days, even though he became a banker. I think he's like a lot of people that, amazed by the capabilities,
Yeah. It's very unique, but you just mentioned something really interesting, that if you look at a lot of the CEOs and even people, they actually come from humanities.
No, you're right. You're right.
So how do you make the chasm? So maybe you actually need more liberal arts and humanities, because the zeros and ones are already going to be taken care of by AI, right?
Well, I think that, at one time, my understanding was, a lot of places like to hire liberal arts majors because they were viewed as people who had rounded thought processes and people who could think, who were thinkers. And, now we have went, and I get on my soapbox when I talk about, kind of where we pared down what we've done with majors in this country. But, we're in this deal where colleges have cut majors because of the business terms. And I understand that as well as anybody, because, if you have four people in a major, it's not cost efficient. But at the same time, we have a bunch of colleges that are all saying, okay, we're offering business administration, or we're offering healthcare management, or we're offering all these in-demand business courses or STEM courses or these things, and we've cut the humanities out, and so we've cut arts, liberal arts degrees out in a lot of places, and it's become workforce themed, or and so they haven't, they're not really liberal arts colleges anymore. Historically, a lot of places are liberal arts, but they've stopped being liberal arts colleges. It's kind of like the thing where, and this is terrible to say out loud, 30 to 40 years ago, there was a push in this country where everybody had to have a college degree. And the reality is not everybody needs a college degree. We need people who are skilled tradespeople. And there was a lack of emphasis, and many states they de-emphasized VOTECs and trade centers, and they stopped funding them. And so now you have these massive amount of openings in people. We don't have welders, we don't have plumbers, we don't have people in HVAC, we don't have, and those are fantastic jobs because and now because there's people, we don't have the people to do them. And these are the kind of people a lot of these people who are tremendously skilled, they don't need a 4-year college degree. They never needed a 4-year college degree, but we had a push years ago where everybody needs a bachelor's degree, and that simply was not true in this country. We don't have enough jobs for people with 4-year college degrees. And I think a 4-year college degree is extremely valuable, but not everybody needs one.
Absolutely. I think that the definition of human capital has definitely evolved since William James days, for sure, and definitely John Dewey and all, how they thought about it, and because information is everywhere, you don't come to college for information anymore exclusively. You come for other reasons, right? So I guess as you put on your hat around all of these, are you grappling what kind of academic programs to add, modify, retire? How do you think you're going to approach all of that in response to the rise of AI?
Well, you want to stay relevant, no doubt about it, and you want to try to meet the demands of the market, because at the end of the day, this, as I said before, we are a business, and that's an ugly term in academia. To term yourself a business, but the reality is, our students are consumers. Now, they still have to go to class, they still have to achieve academically. While they're consumers, they're not given anything. They have to do the work in the classroom. But we have to sell a product that is compelling and useful. So what is that product going to be? So like you said, how do we meet the demands of the market? So finding what is relevant in our area in Georgia and nationally, trying to keep the current degrees fresh, sometimes maybe retooling that degree. Maybe the degree is fine, it just needs the curriculum retooled to meet. And like we're talking about, using AI, fusing AI within the courses could be that way. And simply some things are simply going to go away, and we've seen some of that across the majors. I would argue that we've probably hit the humanities and arts harder than they probably should have been hit in the last couple of decades. But I can't fault any administrator who cut a program that was hemorrhaging money when they had to do that was best for their institution.
So I'm curious. So why haven't we moved towards an immersion? Like, let's say you're at a program and you have people double major or just kind of combine these interdisciplinary, because all the research shows that even if you're a doctor, an architect, if you have liberal arts humanities major, you're just going to be better as a result of that. Why is there a surrendering to this or that and not taking the very best of things we have in creating stronger programs?
Does the consumer often want what they want?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's much like we say we know what's best for you. This is better for you, but they're like, well, I've taken the gen ed courses. Now I want to take what I want to major in, and I don't care if you think that minor in English is good for me. I don't want an English degree. I want degree X. Now that's my thought of what the consumer consumer probably wants. And if you're not going to give me degree X, I can go to college A, B, C, D, F, G and get what I want. And I think there is a stress in the market to deliver what the consumer wants. And so you're right. We sometimes say, hey, we know what they need, but the reality is maybe we can't sell what they need.
Yeah, the value proposition hasn't been completely articulated, because if you tell someone, hey, this is what history shows, they're like, well, this is what I think. So
and I don't mean to interrupt you.
Please.
Interdisciplinary studies, you're talking about, that degree, the IDS, interdisciplinary study, that degree has a terrible has not always had the best reputation. It's always kind of been that, hey, I got 140 hours and I need a degree. So, and I think but that degree is actually not a bad degree for the person who wants to take some of this, some of that, roll their own degree. And there have been some, and off the top of my head, I couldn't name them, but I know there's been some interesting institutions that have had a lot of those create your own degree situations. What was the one, was it Hampshire? What was the one in the Northeast that basically all their degrees where you create with your faculty your own degree? Everything was your own degrees were created.
Oh my God. I actually recently, it'll come to me.
There was one up there where I think that they didn't have any set majors, but you basically created all your degrees with your advisor, which I don't think is practical from a running a college standpoint, but I think it's an unbelievable idea. It's a fantastic idea of being able to create a degree and that could truly check a lot of boxes and educate a person.
So I know that there's been a lot of discussion about accreditors, right? How do you think accreditation might evolve or change as a result of this?
As a result of AI?
Yeah. Like how we even accredit a school you mentioned, obviously research institutions have been under scrutiny lately, but given the current political atmosphere and just AI, is it possible that we don't have to say you need to be in school for 4 years, you get a bachelor's degree in 2 years, or how we formulate degree granting institutions, maybe not the accreditation body, but how we kind of assign 4 years for bachelor's and X amount of years for master's and what have you. And obviously in a clinical is a whole different story.
Sure. That's a fantastic question. I've not thought about the effects of AI on accreditation. That honestly, I've given most of what we've talked about, there's been some bandwidth that even if it's ran in the background, I've thought about. That's one thing I've truly not given any time to thinking about. And that's an interesting question. I think it's going to be interesting to see where we go in the next few years in dealing with the ability to add more accreditors to the pipeline. And so the addition of extra accreditors, the addition of AI as a more widely accepted tool, how all these things converge is going to tell us a lot more, as we move forward. But, the 3-year bachelor degree, I know we're seeing more and more of that come out now. You're seeing it more and more, there's more colleges every day you're seeing that are being allowed to offer that 3-year degree, whether it be some of these former regional accreditors letting them do it as trial runs or approving it totally. Whether that's going to be a professional bachelor's or and be kind of denoted different on a transcript, or it's going to be, I don't know. These are some really good questions that a 90-hour bachelor degree. It'll be interesting to see what effect this all has and how that affects accreditation, and what kind of catalyst AI can be for the change to both of those. So I've probably just restated your question more than I have answered.
It's a complicated one. I mean, when I traveled to Finland, I traveled to Singapore looking at the education. Even looking at my own kids, there's things that my kids learn in high school, I learn in college, right? So,
yeah,
obviously, times are changing, and the consumption of information becomes easier in some ways, right? So, perhaps. So, I guess just a couple of more questions. If you could, this is a loaded question, design a future-facing education initiative from scratch, what would it look like? How would you tackle this much uncertainty?
Oof, I don't know. That's a good question as well. Not that I knew when we were going to talk about AI, these were going to be challenging questions. As you were a philosophy major, and you got to do a lot of deep thinking. I was an exercise science major, so there wasn't a whole lot of deep thinking going on with the exercise science crew, as you can imagine.
Well, you'll outrun me.
Not anymore, I won't. But yeah, so I think that I think the face-to-face educational component is still important. And, we've been hearing predictions of 100% online education for a while. And I don't believe that's going to come to pass anytime soon, because I still believe, even after, and I think COVID taught us this in spades. I think that humans need human interaction, and that it is important to have human interaction. I think that something more akin to hybrid learning. I don't know that the model of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday can be as effective maybe as something that is more hybrid in nature, and moving things to more permanently hybrid in nature, and having less face-to-face, but still having a face-to-face component, and having no class that's totally face-to-face, and having no class that's not designated totally online, but having having these hybrid classes, and still that way you have, that's what your on-campus components, can be. That would be, for an on-campus model, that would be probably what I would move. If I was designing something, I would want to move to that. It would also allow you, and easier scheduling in terms of classroom usage. You could actually double the number of classes you're having in that sense, because you're using half the classroom time that you would have had before. But I still think there's going to, for the foreseeable future, I still think you're going to have a lot of students who are going to crave that human interaction. They're going to still crave that residence life experience, that ability to have the college, that college experience of living on a campus and doing the things college students do. I think there's still quite a few students who want to do that, and I don't. While we see a sense of people not valuing college education as much as they once did, I don't believe that they're not valuing the college experience. Those who want a college education, from the 18 to 22-year-old range.
Yeah, I think it would be a leap, and we definitely. I do agree. In COVID, we saw the deteriorating impact, especially on younger students.
And we're all seeing them now in our colleges. The ill effects of what they went through, having to be totally online. The retarding of their social skills. They can't carry a conversation face to face. They would be just as happy sitting across the table from you texting as being able to look you in the eye and talk to you.
So how is AI, you mentioned this, what does this mean to you personally? How does it change your leadership, who you work with, how you manage your university?
Well, obviously, no secret, I'm no AI native. That's for sure. I'm 3 decades past being what you would term an AI native, and I'm fairly new to it.
Yeah, a lot of we all are. It's just evolving.
I got into it probably 3 or 4 months ago. Really. I probably hadn't messed with AI until about 3 to 4 months ago. And then I first got into it, and it was honestly like being shown a secret that everyone knew but you. And I was so stunned that I thought I was a caveman. I was amazed at how ignorant I was about AI. I mean, I knew the concept of AI, in broad strokes, but I had never used any. I had never used any of them. There had been some that, when you pulled up the web, there had been some generative AI, the AI that had done some things for you, but I had never used any of the products. And I started using them, and I was like, this is just unbelievable. And I was hooked. I was just hooked. And so, for me, it's changed me. It's probably opened my mind quite a bit. And I am still growing, learning, trying to understand. And I think that's probably why the more I deal with it, the more I use it, the more ignorant I feel, because I know there's so much more out there and so much more potential for it that I probably don't understand. And so I'm trying to be respectful of the potential of AI. But it has, yes, it's changed the way I view higher ed and the way I view our path forward. And so now I'm actively trying to think about how to integrate it, how to use it, how it will affect us. Whereas I probably was like those faculty I would have referred to before I started messing with it, thinking, it was out there, but I really didn't know about it, so it was wasn't important to me. Didn't
Yeah.
affect me. But now I am like, wow, yes, this affects me. It's very important, and I'm hungry to know more and hungry to find ways to integrate and use it effectively.
President Kennedy, it's been a true pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't think anyone learned anything special in this podcast, but hopefully, hopefully that they understand that even some of us that are messing with it feel overwhelmed and are grappling with how to move forward with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.